Welcome, everyone. I'm Tracy Fitzpatrick, and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's event, Microsoft Azure Cloud Security Masterclass. Presenting today's topic is Logan Hillard. Logan is a cybersecurity instructor with over 4 years of experience and has worked in multiple security projects. He has successfully delivered numerous corporate training to date for various clients across the globe. Now, please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored to your specific requirements. If you are interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you'll get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adapting to change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We do have 9 practice areas in which we specialize. They encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the Cloud Practice Area. Netcom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio of courses for the topic being covered today. Our upcoming classes include various trainings on the given courses. You can also access a variety of marketing assets, such as the free training and blogs, by clicking on the Available Event handout. These offerings can be found with a simple search on our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session will cover the insights into securing your cloud infrastructure with industry-leading practices with the latest tools and strategies offered by Azure to safeguard your data, applications, and networks. This masterclass has been designed to provide hands-on session designed to equip you with the skills and knowledge necessary to secure your Azure cloud environment. In addition, participants will get guidance on effectively preparing for the AZ500 certification course and exam in today's session. Now I would like to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To begin with, you do have the option to view in full screen by clicking on the full screen button on the right side of the GoToWebinar viewer. Simply hit the escape key to exit the full screen. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters here in the questions pane, and we will address them at the end of the session. And to get the best out of today's events, we've included the slides, courses we talk about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. You may refer to them at any time to get a better understanding of today's topic. And we do realize that some of you may have to leave early and want to let you know that as you do leave the session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to take a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience and improve our future sessions for you. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. And now I'd like to pass this over to our trainer to present today's topic. Hey, Logan, thank you so much for joining us today.
So thank you, Tracy, for this class. My name is Logan Hillard. My background, as you can see on the screen, is a network engineer, systems administrator, cybersecurity instructor. I've been a junior pen tester in my background. I'm a small business owner. I do training for organizations. And I am excited about cybersecurity. So that's kind of my background and why I'm here today. So welcome to today's masterclass. This masterclass will be covering Azure Cloud Security. My name is Logan Hillard. Again, I've covered this, but My background is in networking, systems administration, and cybersecurity, as well as cloud. I have my CISSP as well as my SC200, so I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I can kind of work my way through whatever GUI or problem I may be running into. Um, but today we are going to be talking and focusing on Microsoft's cybersecurity solutions in their cloud environment. That'd be Azure. All right. So let's go ahead and get started here. The agenda is going to be discussing basic cybersecurity principles, as well as covering some basic questions your cybersecurity team should be asking themselves. If you haven't asked yourselves any question, this might be a good place to get started. We're also going to evaluate a lot of the tools, obviously, in Azure that focus on cybersecurity. And then we'll also have a live exercise. We'll probably have two of them actually, one at the beginning and one more towards the endish, where we cover a real attack against an actual endpoint, and what that looks like from the blue team's perspective. At the end, we'll have a Q&A, and we'll cover some questions that you guys might have, and we'll go from there. All right. So again, appreciate everyone watching this masterclass with Netcom. So cybersecurity pathway. This is kind of where everyone begins. This is cybersecurity. Whether or not you understand any of this has little bearing on whether or not you actually go through this process. Many companies are still working on cybersecurity fundamentals. This actually has a name. It is called out as kind of like the intro or the very beginning portion of Zero Trust. It's before you kind of get into Zero Trust, but I've broken that down into two sections: cybersecurity fundamentals and defense in depth, which is really just cybersecurity at every layer. We'll talk about that here momentarily. Zero Trust is something that a lot of people hear about and talk about. That's not going to be our main conversation that we cover today, but zero trust is an important aspect to understand in cybersecurity, as again, it is kind of like the end goal of every cybersecurity team. Again, regardless of whether or not you understand that, think that, are prepared for that, it is just the main course of transition for cybersecurity teams. So whether that's in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or even longer, zero trust is coming, right? So we'll kind of go through each one bit by bit and just reflect on what cybersecurity is before we really get into some of the cybersecurity solutions that Microsoft provides and how it's going to help you, um, you know, cover off this pathway. So cybersecurity fundamentals, starting with just what is cybersecurity, or really how does cybersecurity operate in a business? It is a balance, right? It's not like, oh, I'm just going to have all of my cybersecurity as soon as I want it. Never works that way. You can't just purchase cybersecurity, for instance, right? You can buy solutions, but you can't just have good cybersecurity techniques and procedure just right out the gate. First of all, the business doesn't really want cybersecurity by default. There's no real business reason to slow down users, make their work less effective, make it more difficult for them to log into things. These are all what cybersecurity wants, which is what I just deem as security. But the business is really focused on usability, right? So usability is just, being able to do stuff, the business. So the business always wants usability, cyber team always wants security, but they kind of are uh, they're relational to each other, but anti-relational. So as you increase usability, generally security goes down. As you increase security, generally usability goes down. So cybersecurity is a balance for the business, um, in between real cybersecurity posture and usability and functionality of the business itself. Without corporate endorsement, this is never going to happen for any business. You can't just fabricate or create cybersecurity at a whim. So getting corporate endorsement, especially for the more end result of zero trust, is going to be a requirement, right? Something that is not only agreed upon um, by leadership, but also something that is um, going to be signed off on, agreed to, they're going to participate in, they believe in. It's not just a layer one like, oh, let's just buy that solution. It's going to be a full understanding, a full grasp of what is required for that to happen, why it's necessary, and a full acceptance of that reality. And that doesn't mean that things are easier, right? ZTA does not necessarily mean, oh, zero, cybersecurity is done, and now everyone could just log into everything and it's super easy. Oftentimes, again, cybersecurity increases, usability goes down. So the business kind of has to accept that reality. And that is very difficult for them to accept. It also can cost a lot of money, which is also another part of this, right? So corporate endorsement has to be taken into account for those of us in cybersecurity that are trying to get our corporations or organizations to that point. Some basic cybersecurity fundamentals to just understand out the gate, right? Have you updated your systems, right? Has anyone gone to Windows 11 yet, right? If you haven't, it's something that is on the horizon. Literally, I think Windows 10 is going out of date either end of 2024 or beginning of 2025. So it is around the corner where Windows 10 will no longer get cybersecurity updates, which is for corporate environments, that's different. For those of us at home, um, they will have extensions and things like that, but it's coming, right? And so if you haven't gone to Windows 11, that might be something that everyone needs to start thinking about here coming up. Backups, right? When was the last time you verified your backups? It's not just about running the backups and making sure that we have backups. We need to actually verify that when we go through the process of restoring those backups, that they actually restore properly, right? Do we have redundant backups, right? Redundant as in multiple locations. Do we have some of those redundant backups off-site in case we lose HQ, right? Um, are they segmented from HQ, right? A lot of ransomware has actually been focused on finding all of the backups, not just one set of backups, ransomwaring the backups first, and then ransomwaring all of the information, all the endpoints. Much more difficult to respond to that type of incident as a defender when your backups have been ransomwared specifically. So, that's a big pain point that companies are starting to run into. Yes, they had backups, but they're not being managed or maintained properly. So, adequate user training, right? Are the CEOs being trained? Are all of your users being trained? HR, finance, everybody. This isn't just like, oh, well, have all the worker bees get trained too. Specifically, leadership needs to be trained on cybersecurity understanding, especially for things like spear phishing and whatnot, because that as a red team or as an attacker, that is who I focus on. It's called spear phishing, right? I target individuals who are in leadership because I can normally get more done with their accounts, right? Who's going to give me more access, right? Like a receptionist's email, or the CEO's email, right? That should be a pretty easy answer. So going after leadership is actually kind of like the name of the game. It's what I'm going to focus on as an attacker. So if you don't focus on it as a defender, you're already behind. And then one of the last things that I really recommend, and this is a really big deal, is something known as EDR. Being called more XDR lately, especially Microsoft's utility is going to be known as XDR, but EDR, endpoint detection and response, is essentially kind of what it sounds like, but it's basically antivirus on steroids. It is very good at blocking attack vectors, and that's actually exactly what we're going to see in the live session that we go over. I'm going to attack an endpoint, and we're going to see how the EDR, known as Microsoft Defender XDR, is able to detect and block the attack in real time, right? And then as a SOC analyst, we're going to see from the blue team perspective through the portal what that allows us to do, what the alert looks like, and we're going to see, from the blue team, what this solution is really capable of. So again, cybersecurity fundamentals are that's kind of like your step one. This is where I start with organizations. Now, defense in depth is a little bit more detailed, of course, right? So defense in depth is a cybersecurity strategy where you're not just blocking here and here. It's not just training and EDR. It is everywhere, every single location that you can. You are implementing cybersecurity solutions. This includes things like IDS and IPS, right? Intrusion detection and intrusion um, prevention systems on the network layer, basically at the firewall. So if it sees something coming in, it'll block it. So it's not just about the endpoint. It's not just about training. It's not just about backups. It is as many things as possible. And again, that is kind of a never-ending conversation. You could really go into a lot of detail on that. But defense in depth is just the understanding that there's always more work to do. Oftentimes, corporations and organizations hire uh, cybersecurity experts to perform what's known as gap analysis. And gap analysis is basically telling the organization where do we not have cybersecurity solutions, and that is built around the idea of defense in depth. The cybersecurity consultants understand defense in depth, and they will help you and your organization understand where to implement more of those cybersecurity solutions to perform defense in depth at every level. So one of the major things that you need to be doing for defense in depth um, is start monitoring immediately, right? So if we have, if we start monitoring, then we can actually see what's possible, right? If you can't see what's happening in your organization, you cannot defend against it. That's kind of like the very beginning of that process. Um, so if you're trying to look for like how to increase the potential of your organization, um, this is where I would really begin. It's not just about, the defense in depth is great, all the solutions at every level, but really, defense in depth comes down to, can you see the attacks that are going on? Um, um, can you see the attacks that are going on in your organization so that you can block them? If you can't see the attacks, you cannot block them, period. So monitoring is kind of a prerequisite to that step. And this is normally done with a SIEM. We'll talk about what a SIEM is here in a bit, but this is normally where blue teams really get their start, right? SOC analysts out there, right? You're already doing this step. You may not have all the fundamentals down yet, and that's okay, but monitoring is really a big portion of the defense in depth strategy. Um, so another really good take on this is to hire a pen tester. Um, Pen testers, red teamers specifically, red team is just another way to say someone who is attack oriented, whereas a blue teamer is someone who is defense oriented. A pen tester is a red teamer, and red teamers generally are going to focus more on the things that truly matter when it comes to cybersecurity. Someone who is just performing compliance, like an auditor, is really just about checking the boxes, which again, I understand that compliance is necessary to do business. But that's not necessarily how we would um, it's not necessarily how we would focus on the attack itself. The red teamers understand how attacks happen. And so if you can understand how the attack happens, you understand generally how to defend against it, right? It's kind of like in American football, if you're the defense and you go onto the pitch, go onto the field, and you start playing against nobody, right? And you never train against an active, offense, how are you going to understand what to defend against, right? It's a pretty simple um, conversation there for most blue teams. Most people will understand this, but it takes effort to do this because you have to bring in red teamers. Red teamers aren't everywhere. Every blue teamer is not a red teamer necessarily. They may not have that background or that experience, and so it can be difficult to get them to kind of understand some of this strategy, the methodologies that the red teamers use to attack your organizations. If you have someone that understands that, they will be more equipped to defend your organization. So another big part of this is it's not just about security tools, it is about maintaining those security tools, right? So the security tools themselves, right? Those are a really good idea. Of course, we need to have those, right? But maintaining those tools is a completely different conversation, right? So let's say that you purchase a bunch of tools, um, and you just install them everywhere. I've seen this many times, many organizations. I had one organization that purchased three separate RMMs, which are remote management suites. Think like TeamViewer or Screen Connect or something like that. So those tools are great, right? Fantastic. But to have multiple of those tools doesn't really make sense. Maybe two as a backup, but three doesn't really make any sense to me unless there's some scenario where that's a requirement. Um, it's kind of like the backup conversation as well, right? Don't just purchase a backup solution and set it to run every week and just forget about it. Maintaining those tools is really the part that matters. Very similar with the SIEM, right? Don't just build a SIEM and let it monitor the whole time. You need to have someone that's actually watching it, maintaining it, improving it over time. That's really how this happens. This is the best way to actually get the proper use out of your tools rather than just purchasing them. It's a whole process. That's why we need SMEs and experts to actually be kind of in charge of running these tools so that, because they're going to know that that's a requirement and they're going to make sure that that happens. So that's a really big portion of cybersecurity. Um, Now, this next step, zero trust, is something that not everyone has really had conversations about yet. It is a big topic. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but we do need to touch on it just so that everyone knows what's possible. So, um, ZTA, Zero Trust, is a top-down organizational policy, and it requires corporate endorsement. This is not like, well, we would like to have corporate endorsement, or we think it's a good idea to get corporate endorsement. This is going to be a hard requirement because the cost on something like this is going to be very high. Not only because the organization can take 9 to 36 months to actually configure zero trust, like across all of their environments and at every level. Um, every facet of the business is kind of required for this. Um, but depending on the size and complexity, um, it can take a long time. Um, 9 months is honestly really fast. I would expect more like 2 years for an organization to really turn around and be able to set up zero trust like across their environment. Because it isn't just a single solution, right? It's not just let's purchase this one solution and now we're zero trust compliant. That's not really how it works. It's a team effort. Everyone has to be involved. Leadership, every branch of the organization, every business unit of the organization, every level of IT will be affected. Every entity in the business, everyone will be affected. It's a complete change in how the business operates from a technical and cybersecurity perspective. And it does include solutions, but sometimes it's actually about procedure. So there are a lot of different changes that come with zero trust, and there's also different levels. There are three different levels that are possible um, for zero trust from CISA. CISA is kind of the main architect of zero trust, and I recommend going to their website for more details. But again, this is kind of where everyone is heading, regardless of whether or not they actually know it. Um, your IT people may already be thinking about this, even if it hasn't been something that has been pushed yet by them or your cybersecurity people. Um, but yeah, zero trust is kind of where we're headed. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is really going to be focusing on defense in depth. So this is we've kind of laid the groundwork of where everyone is going to be, and with very little effort, we'll show today kind of how Microsoft provides the possibility for a company to jump right into defense in depth and specifically monitoring, all right, and a lot of the cybersecurity fundamentals as well. So, kind of a different pathway here, right? Categories of threats is going to be a different idea here, right? We're going to start talking about, what types of attackers you would actually have. So, um, and we're going to start with like the easiest attackers to block to the hardest attackers to block. So, the hardest attackers or the easiest attackers to block are just random phishing emails. This is really 365 and even things like G Suite will block most random phishing emails just right out the gate, mostly because they come from emails that are known to be bad, right? There are lists that are that are basically sharing, um, that are basically saying things like, you know, this email is a bad one, right? This email is um, this email is a how do you say? This email domain is not going to be a good idea, right? So just block that out the gate. So those really you don't even have to do much about those. They will often go to spam or just get blocked outright. So the organization doesn't have to focus too much on random phishing emails. Now, the targeted phish is one where this really does become a problem for organizations. I've tried to secure organizations against this specific type of attack, and what happens is it turns into what's known as a business email compromise or BEC. And the interesting part about this threat is that it's so low cost to the target to deal with this. It's like they might steal a couple $100 that honestly organizations barely care about it. Even if it happens to them, they don't really turn around and make any changes necessarily because the cost is so low. Even further, the cost is so low that it doesn't even really make sense to contact the authorities. So because it's such a low cost and low effort attack, there's a very low chance of the attacker actually getting caught. So it continues, right? So that's why it's so pervasive. It happens to everybody. If you've there's lots of different types of scams out there that kind of ask you for money, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Now, these are much harder to get past because these scammer organizations, which they are organizations working together to try to figure this out, are finding ways around these blocks that the random phishing emails, number one, right, that the random phishing emails haven't done yet, and they're finding ways around these blocks to make it sure that they can actually land in your email inbox. So that's something that a lot of organizations are dealing with today. Um, Now, level three is where it really starts to get a little bit scary because level three is more of an opportunistic attack or what's known as a script kiddie. So whenever someone drops a proof of concept known as a POC online, which is really just code that can be used by attackers to attack a target, Cloudflare just released and published some information that it takes roughly 22 minutes on average, which means that people do it faster than that, um, for real targets in the wild to be exploited. So just think about that, right? So an attack comes out, it gets posted on some GitHub somewhere. You haven't heard of it, obviously. The public hasn't really heard about it yet. This is really just going around like hacker forums and things like that. And once it's published, 22 minutes later, people have reverse engineered or refanged is one way to call it. Adding fangs back to the POC. Defanging is where you upload POC content that does not actually attack anything. It's more like it's a proof of concept. It doesn't actually cause any damage. So they just have to the attackers have to reverse engineer that code and then make it do damage, and now they can use that code against a real target. So opportunistic attackers and script kiddies can be damaging, very, very damaging to real world organizations. If something drops and it's against something that you're using and that thing is accessible on the internet, you kind of might be out of luck. All your tools may not be, really designed to defend against that type of attack. It may be a brand new, type of attack in terms of the way it was thought up, what it uses. The EDR might be searching for something specific, but if this uses some novel attack technique, the EDR doesn't know about it, right? So opportunistic attackers and script kiddies can be very damaging to the organization. Targeted attackers, on the other hand, are honestly even more scary, right? Even more scary. So what happens is the targeted attacker says, I'm targeting this specific organization for some reason, and that might be, there could be a lot of different reasons, right? There could be plenty of different reasons, of why those attackers would be going after you. They could be people like Anonymous, where they're um, they're focused on some idea. They could be going after money. They could just be doing it for fun. There are many different types of attackers that target organizations for specific reasons, and at that point, it's going to be very difficult to defend against that style of attacker because they are dedicated. Once the attacker becomes dedicated, that's when it becomes more necessary for organizations to defend with a defense in depth strategy to block that style of attack, right? Because opportunistic, the level three script kiddies, they will just use some POC content online and just attack everybody. So if one of them doesn't allow that attack to take place, who cares? There's thousands of other organizations that may still be a target. So targeted attackers, on the other hand, they only have one organization in mind, yours. So if they're going after your organization and you have not implemented defense in depth strategies, things like seams, monitoring, things like that, it's going to be very difficult to stop them. Very difficult. To take that even further, if you're attempting or thinking that your organization is potentially capable of blocking level five, nation states, APTs, advanced persistent threats, uh, not really, right? Your organization is probably not up to snuff. I would recommend a ZTA level 3 compliant organization to even begin the conversation of how we would stop a nation state attacker. Nation states are very well equipped, they're very well funded, and in terms of will, they have the most, right? They are not going to stop until they succeed. And that can take years, right? A style of attack from a nation state can literally take a decade, right? So that type of commitment to an attack is not something that is easily blocked. And even with the best types of defense, even things like air gaps have weaknesses. And this is how, nation states operate. So again, this is really just to break down who we are trying to defend against to show really where the solutions that Microsoft provides will help us. Again, basically what we're going to be talking about is going to help us defend against level four and potentially even level five, but not every level five, not the best level fives. Now, when we're talking about defending against, insider threats, that is where we have some solutions that can help us defend against that. Insider threats are kind of a different category unto themselves, that are unlike the other categories that we just covered. But some of the solutions that Microsoft has just right out the gate will help us try to defend against them. I've actually done this, where we thought that we had someone logging in from a different location, and we were able to provide, detail on where that location was and determine whether or not those logins were valid, just based off of the simple IAM known as Entra ID. We'll talk about that here soon. That comes with any Microsoft subscription. So if you're using 365, you have access to IAM, you can defend at a very basic level against insider threats. Even further, if you spend a little bit more money, like getting an E5 license, privileged identity management or PIM is something that can be used to defend against real insider threats for a variety of reasons. It allows things like just-in-time access. It allows things like validation of requests. So if someone requests access to something, you can have multiple people sign off on that, kind of like it basically allows you to, from a IT perspective, implement policy of having leadership kind of sign off on things, which is really cool. And then you can also only allow access to something for a short period of time, which is super great. Data loss prevention, or DLP, I often call this like anti-Snowden. This is really designed to track what is being sent through communication platforms, think email, Teams, Slack, whatever it is. And Microsoft can monitor the information that's flowing across those channels and determine if something is being sent by a user that they shouldn't be sending, something like a social security number, or an EIN number, or whatever. That information can be tracked through a variety of different methods, and we'll talk about those as we go through the slides. So Microsoft is not necessarily everyone's first choice in the cybersecurity realm. They are a huge provider, of course, in many different ways. I mean, look at AI, right? They're basically in the lead at the moment because of the purchase of OpenAI recently, and they're also acquiring other artificial intelligence organizations. It's similar on the cybersecurity side. They are essentially the largest big data cybersecurity vendor in the space. Nobody competes against them, not a single vendor, right? You could talk about every cybersecurity organization out there, even the ones that are like known for cybersecurity principles, like CrowdStrike, for instance, someone who is really good at EDR. They understand the attack vectors. They're prior NSA guys. Um, and so because of that, you wouldn't necessarily think that Microsoft would be the best at this, but they are because of big data, which is the same thing as talking about AI, right? Why is artificial intelligence good? It's because it has this huge data set on the back end that it can pull from. If the data set is smaller, then it is less capable. And this is kind of how you can look at Microsoft's solution. They have access to every single Microsoft endpoint on the planet, right? As of one of the Windows 10 variants, I think 1607 or 1809 or one of those. Basically, at some point with their endpoints, they started using telemetry from every single endpoint for cybersecurity purposes specifically. So if an endpoint gets attacked in India, Microsoft gets notified within roughly 15 minutes or so, and the rest of the world can actually get defended from that style of attack. If it's a novel technique that does get tracked, right, then it can be uploaded to the cloud, uploaded to Microsoft's big data location in the cloud, and all the other endpoints now understand that style of attack, so they can defend against it. That is that is unheard of. Like, yes, EDR, that's kind of what they do, but in terms of capability, nobody matches Microsoft. And just to be clear, I'm not paid by Microsoft or anything like this. This is just my own determination of Microsoft's capabilities versus other vendors. There are many things that Microsoft can do better, of course, but from this perspective, they are winning, right? There's nobody else really in this category. Um, if you want to look at other organizations like AWS, right, you're saying, well, AWS or Azure, AWS just says, we're going to allow other vendors to do cyber for us, whereas Microsoft is taking it upon themselves to build out a cybersecurity platform. And again, we'll see that here in a moment. It's very easy to implement a virtual SOC, also kind of known as a VSOC, um, with Microsoft's solution. Your SOC analysts do not need to be in a single location. Your resources do not need to be in a single location. Even further, they don't even have to be in the same cloud location. They don't even have to be in Azure. Your endpoints, your resources can be in Azure, AWS, GCP. It doesn't matter. Azure supplies the capability to provide cybersecurity resources in basically any environment. There are some probably tertiary cloud providers that are not covered or maybe covered through a different methodology than the major providers. But generally, Microsoft is very good at allowing users to make that call themselves, which is great. So your organization doesn't even have to be in Azure for you to start utilizing Azure's Microsoft's cybersecurity solutions to defend your organization. I've never heard of anyone do that before. Supports most on-prem and cloud infrastructure scenarios. Even on-prem, let's say that you're still living in the 90s. That's fine, right? That is possible. The only thing I don't think would work is something that would be fully segmented from the internet, air gapped. Though I think you can do a more of a zero trust implementation of an air gap scenario where your on-prem organization um, only has access to the internet through a proxy, and that proxy can support endpoint telemetry, which would essentially allow you to secure and monitor an air gap network anywhere in the world, which is pretty cool. If the organization is already using 365 or Azure, you could spin up a SOC overnight. I have done it. Over a weekend. I I said give me plenty of time. I asked for 2 weeks, but I was able to basically complete that project over a single weekend, and we had resources in Azure and AWS. The Azure resources were just like 3 clicks, and it was already happening. And again, we'll talk about what that kind of looks like here in a bit. But even other resources and other locations, it was so simple. Yes, there are always problems, there are always issues. It can throw you for a loop, but there's a lot of resources out there for all the Microsoft solutions. Very easy to troubleshoot. So why don't we have a SOC, right? This is kind of where we start asking ourselves questions. You may even be asking, what is a SOC, right? Security Operations Center, similar to a NOC, Network Operations Center, but this is for the cybersecurity team. Um, a security operations center is basically where all of your SOC analysts live, right? It's the tools and the solutions that they are using to secure your organization. Now, the reasons why most organizations don't have a SOC is because leadership has not been convinced that they need one. That's the easiest way to kind of start that conversation. Further, you could say that there aren't any technical resources at the organization that really even understand why something like this would be necessary, right? Something that I don't have on this slide that is really necessary to talk about that I kind of forgot here is that a SOC is a reactive cybersecurity solution, right? Whereas EDR can block things, um, where EDR can block things immediately, right? Like in the moment. SOCs are really about responding to threats, right? SIEMs don't always. By the way, a SOC uses a SIEM, which is really just a centralized logging interface. Um, Security Information Event Management System is what a SIEM stands for. We'll talk about that here in a bit too. A SOC is kind of built on a SIEM, and a SIEM is a reactive strategy, which is good. You need to be monitoring your organization. It's kind of a requirement these days. If you don't monitor, like we talked about, you cannot see. If you do not have visibility, you cannot stop attackers. Period. If you cannot see them, you cannot stop them. Again, it's like defense playing against an invisible offense. How do you know where they're at? Right? The quarterback throws a Hail Mary and you don't even know that are wide receivers behind you. He catches it, goes to the end zone. How do you stop that? You can't, right? It's literally impossible. Um, so the reactive solution is kind of the bare bones. We can talk about more proactive scenarios, and the Microsoft solutions allow for that. But the reactive scenario is important here. You have to be able to react to incidents and alerts. So corporate leadership may not be there, right? Understanding the ROI to describe to corporate leadership, how much is it going to cost, right? There's a lot of conversations there, and it can be costly, right? Just having a security operations center team, right? I mean, what are we talking about? Is it a small team of like three? That's probably not going to be enough, right? Is this 24/7 SOC? How much training do these people require, right? We're going to need a manager too. So, and we're going to be on call. So we're going to have rotations. And we also need to prevent burnout. So there's a lot of conversations that need to happen just from like the cost perspective. We may not have human technical resources, and maybe you guys haven't built out a SOC yet because, well, it actually costs a lot of money from an infrastructure perspective. Thankfully, Microsoft solutions don't actually have a lot of infrastructure costs at the front end. It is a reoccurring subscription, and that can be costly in its own right. Roughly, the ROI on Microsoft security solutions, from what I've seen, this is just my own perspective, is about a year to a year and a half. So if your on-prem solution ROI is better than that, which you can actually kind of say, okay, if we spend this much money on locations, right, on on infrastructure cost, then like on-prem infrastructure costs, and that cost is only going to ROI of like 7 months versus the cost of our cloud costs. It might actually make sense to build out on-prem. The companies are starting to come to that realization. But the nice part about Microsoft is you can spin up and spin down um, at at your own whim. And what ends up happening is a lot of organizations spend more money to do this, but that is the convenience of the solutions. That is why we choose, cloud security operations center or virtual security operations center in this day and age. There's a lot of pros to being able to do that. So let's talk about some really basic. I've touched on a couple things, and this is more of a basic coverage of those solutions. But let's talk about some of the major cybersecurity solutions that Microsoft provides in their Azure platform. So Entra ID, previously known as Azure Active Directory or AAD, which is kind of a callback to on-prem Active Directory. AD is what a lot of people will call that. Entra ID is basically your essential authentication service that provides very basic logging capabilities as well as management. So if you have a 365 service, you are already using Entra ID. This has been renamed. It is how you build out users. It's how you provide licenses. It's how you perform logging on those users, right? That's where that information comes from. So whether that's in the Azure portal or through the portal.office portal, the 365 portal, all of that is kind of built on top of Entra ID. There's another service underneath it called Azure Monitor. Doesn't really matter, but basically Entra ID pulls all the information from Azure Monitor, which is really what gives it, these capabilities. So Entra ID is kind of your fundamental, and this comes with every single license in Microsoft. You pay for licenses with Microsoft 365, you get Entra ID. All right. Now you get different levels of capabilities, and we'll talk about that here in a bit, but that is where everyone would begin. If you had an attack, if someone logged into a user account that was from a different country and they started making changes in your organization, this is where you would start your conversation. This is where you would begin your incident response is with Intra ID. Even basic organizations without fully fledged, SOCs in Azure, they can start here. This is where you would begin. Okay. And again, we'll see a live demonstration of that here shortly. So Defender is their endpoint management software. It also does some other things with cloud and stuff. We'll talk about that. But Defender is really your cloud SIEM, right? It allows your SOC analyst to view a portal, which we'll look at soon, and to see alerts and incidents. It is where the SOC analyst will live, very similar to Splunk or any of the other SIEMs that you guys have heard of. There's quite a few out there. Security Onion is another on-prem that's free that you can spin up and work with. But Splunk is kind of one of the major ones that a lot of people go with. Um, and again, of course, there are others, but Defender is great because it gets spun up for you. You don't really have to do a whole lot of work to complete that setup. You just click a few buttons and you're good to go. And then it starts charging you. But the thing it charges you mostly on is the endpoint. So the more that you add, the more logging capabilities you add and things like that, the more it will cost you. Sentinel. Now, Sentinel is a little bit more complicated. Sentinel is a cloud threat hunting platform that also provides SOAR capabilities. Okay, so SOAR capabilities are really the part that matters here is the two letters at the end um, is automated remediation. This stands for security orchestration and automated remediation. So not only does Sentinel provide a lot of some of the basic capabilities that Defender provides, but it also allows more advanced capabilities like threat hunting, which is really this is where the proactive conversation comes into play. Threat hunting for your organization means trying to find attackers in your organization that your security solutions have not seen yet. In other words, we are assuming that an attacker is there, right? So again, just let that settle in for a second. Advanced cybersecurity teams need to be providing proactive solutions in today's cybersecurity threat landscape. And what that looks like is mostly threat hunting. Threat hunting capabilities can be done through some of the Defender portal as well, but Sentinel provides a lot more detailed potential there because not only can you do threat hunting, but you can also do automated remediation to provide remediation to fix the problem once it's seen. And you could do that automatically with scripts, with Python, with logic apps, which are no-code solutions in Azure. Really cool stuff. Very advanced, very difficult. Standard going rate for a technician of that caliber, something like 120 to 150K a year. So this is advanced blue team stuff. If you haven't heard any of the words that I've been using, this is where organizations, um, top 100, top 1,000 organizations are looking to be these days. This is what the consultants are telling them to do. And the way that you really do this in Azure is with Sentinel. Now, Sentinel's platform is very different to Defender's platform. Defender is easy. Sentinel is more advanced and is thus more complicated, but it has a lot more capabilities than Defender does. Defender is easier to use. The capabilities are kind of built in, but Sentinel has the ability to do anything that you can kind of dream of from a cyber perspective. Now, Purview is kind of something that I'm still getting more knowledgeable on, but from a organizational perspective, this thing is next level. Okay, it's extremely expensive, and what I mean by expensive is something like $12 to $36 an hour of runtime. So if you spin this up, you let it run for a few weeks, you know, put two and two together, right? Do the math, right? It's going to be very expensive. Nothing like the Defender or Sentinel platforms, to be honest. Where Sentinel, you get charged for like, I mean, it's things like network storage and compute. With Purview, you're getting charged at every level. But what's nice about it is that you can turn it on and turn it off very easily, and it basically provides a centralized location for a compliance auditor to validate everything about the organization in terms of data, in terms of where the data is stored, in terms of what the data is. It's a very easy way for a compliance auditor to say, look, what is the current scenario? What are we doing? Where is all of our data? What's happening? Right? If we need to categorize data, that's Purview. If we need to track categorizations of data and see which organizations, which business units have access to that data, that's Purview, right? So it provides a different level of capability than Defender and Sentinel do. And again, this is possible not just in Azure, but through other CSPs, cloud service providers as well. So AWS, GCP, which is Google Cloud Provider, and others, right? So that is a newer product from the Microsoft Cyber Solution level from Azure, and it's another level of capability. And again, it's a little bit newer, but it's already shown value to large organizations. Okay, so this part I'm gonna be very brief on in terms of the licenses. I'm not joking when I say that large organizations, they will have a single user that basically performs asset management for licenses, and that's it. Not just from Microsoft, but from all vendors, right? So, virtual licenses from vendors that they're paying for and all this. This is part of that conversation. And again, we're not going to go into a whole lot of detail. I have some links there for anyone that's interested that has access to this slide deck. But the full chart is very confusing. This is not something that is very basic in any way, shape, or form. If anyone says this is easy, they are lying to you. I don't think that Microsoft necessarily makes it confusing on purpose, but it is not straightforward. And the easiest way for me to break this down is like so. If you want everything that we just talked about, get an E5 license. And that is not even true for all of your users. The only users that need E5 licenses are your SOC analysts. Anyone that needs access to the tools need E5 licenses. Everyone else can have an E3 or even a business license. That is possible. I've seen organizations do it, and you can save a lot of money that way. Depending on how many organizations or how many users there are in your organization, it could be hundreds of dollars a month, which is thousands of dollars a year. So from a FinOps, from a financial operations perspective, this is a big deal, a very big deal. And again, how do we get leadership on board? We understand the cost that's going to happen to our company, and we relay that information to the board, to leadership, in a way that is saying, look, we currently have this. You know, we're going to try to thin the cost as much as possible, and we're going to stay on top of it. I'm going to show you that I understand this stuff so that we can keep all the costs to a minimum, because this is going to cost the organization some money, legitimately, definitely legitimately. Okay, so And there are government offerings as well as F offerings, which are more like nonprofits and things like that. And there's even offerings that are, everything in the cloud, which is a little bit cheaper. But yeah, you can get down to like $8 a user, but it's just a lot less features, of course. So let's go ahead and take a 5 minute break, and then I'll start on the remaining topics after the break.
Thank you so much, Logan. Before we go for the break, I'd like to quickly take a few more minutes and complete the badge redemption part with all of you. So, my name is Sagnik. I'm the product marketing manager here at Netcom Learning for Microsoft. And I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank everyone for joining us today. We hope you are enjoying our session on Microsoft Azure Cloud Security. And I'm excited to announce that all the participants in today's masterclass have been given exclusive free access to the AZ500 Microsoft Azure Security Technologies courseware and badges. And the best part is you can claim your digital badges on Microsoft Learn to celebrate your cloud skilling journey. Issued by Microsoft, these badges uh, can help you highlight your newly acquired skills and boost your career potential. So let's take a quick look at the steps that you need to follow, and I'd highly encourage everyone to follow along with me so we can get this done with. So first of all, what you need to do is you need to come to this particular landing page, which is visible on my screen, the link to which has been posted on your GoToWebinar chat window. Please refer to that and please open this link on your browser. Now, once you're on this page, you can see that here is the section around your exclusive Netcom Learning Advantage, how we are helping you start your cloud skills training journey for free. And as part of this offering, we are giving you free access to the Microsoft official courseware on AZ500, along with the related digital achievement trophies and badges. So there are three basic steps that you need to follow to redeem your courseware and badges. The very first step is to sign into your Microsoft Learn account using your personal or professional Outlook or Hotmail account. In case you already have the account and you're already signed into your Microsoft Learn profile, it's a very straightforward process from there. If you're not, if you don't have an existing account, you can simply click on the create one option, right? Once you click on this get started button, you'd be redirected to Microsoft Learn. And if you're signed in, you'd be directly jumping to step 2. If not, you'd be getting this sign in prompt below which you can see there is a create one option, which is highlighted in red over here, right? You just need to click on that, follow the instructions to create your Microsoft profile, your account, and it basically takes just 2 to 3 minutes. It's a simple procedure. You just need to get that completed. And once you are done, you are going to be redirected to the second step as well. If you have an at Microsoft existing account, you can also use that to sign in. If you're not already signed in, by clicking on the next button, by putting in your profile details, and you'd again be logged into your Microsoft Learn profile. Now, once you're done with that step, the step 2 is very simple. You should be seeing this redeem your code dialog box over here, right, on your screen. And there is going to be a code that is going to be pre-populated in this particular dialog. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to edit that. You just simply need to click on the redeem button that is highlighted over here. So once you click on redeem, it's going to take a few seconds, and then eventually you're going to see this particular prompt on your screen that we have successfully added your achievements to your profile. Now, this is where you have successfully redeemed your courseware and badges. To access your training modules, you simply need to navigate to the training tab on your Microsoft Learn profile and be proud of your achievements. Celebrate it by sharing your digital trophies on your LinkedIn profiles. And don't forget to tag Netcom Learning and Microsoft on your posts for maximum visibility and reach. With that, I hope you are able to follow these simple instructions. Everything is available on your chat. Please complete this process and enjoy your break. With that, let's go for the break and we will be resuming the session shortly with Logan taking it forward. Thank you, everyone.
Sure, we are now going to take a 5-minute break, but before we do that, we are going to launch a quick poll that we want to invite you to participate in. Doing so helps us know how we can better serve you by telling us who might be interested in more information or in taking some additional training. In addition, we have a lot more informative webinars coming up, so please go to netcomlearning.com/webinars in order to register.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's continue from where we left off. Okay, so that's kind of like a break. There should be a little break there, but this is kind of the next section where we start really talking about all of the solutions in a little bit more detail, right? I talked about how insider threats can be blocked with a lot of really basic tools. This is where you begin. This is the Entra ID aspect of Azure, okay? And generally, the reason why I'm not calling it Entra ID is because this is what people learn when they go through cybersecurity training. You actually get taught what an IAM is. But for me, the IAM was never kind of like relayed to the solution. So it was always difficult for me to understand what that solution is. So I'm just going to break this down very basic for you. IAM equals Entra, right? Entra ID is the IAM solution, the IAM platform for Azure from Microsoft, right? Easy breakdown. So IAM Entra ID is is accessible with all Azure licenses. Okay, there are some licenses that don't have certain things or may have less capability than other licenses on Entra, but generally they will all have access to Entra, which allows basic logging capabilities. This is basically where you build every user account. This is where you manage those user accounts, those licenses, and really, like, fundamentally, you want to configure least privilege so that not everyone is a global admin, right? Start there, right? Everyone learns about least privilege. It's one of the first things you talk about in every cybersecurity training. Um, this is where you would do that, right? Don't give everyone global admin. Great. That's part of least privilege. That's a good place to start. This also is known as RBAC. Which is role-based access control. So instead of giving everyone global admin, maybe we create a new role and we say, these are all of our systems administrators. They don't all have global admin because maybe the CTO is global admin or something like that. But each of the users have a more narrow, restricted potential. And that is known as RBAC, role-based access control. That is, again, implemented through IAM. A lot of those roles are actually already built into Entra ID, so you don't even have to think about it. You just have to assign them, which is pretty cool. And you can figure out what those granular controls are for each role on Microsoft's website. And that is learn.microsoft.com, by the way, for anyone that is interested. Very useful website from Microsoft. Very easy to remember, too. Learn.microsoft.com. So conditional access, all right? This is basically, if you understand MFA, this is what conditional access is. And conditional access is kind of built into Entra ID. Not every license has access to conditional access, but this is really the new way to describe MFA on Azure's platform, on Microsoft's platform. They are not calling it MFA anymore. The old school MFA is now called legacy MFA, and now the new one is known as conditional access. But basically, it's MFA. Again, default roles, and then you can create custom roles as needed. So PIM is, again, that next level of insider threat potential. It comes with all E5 licensing. So again, if you want everything, you need to get E5. And what it does, it allows for things like time-based access control, which is amazing. You know, what if you're like, look, I don't want any attacks to happen while everyone's asleep. So nobody's allowed to access anything except for maybe some users after 6 p.m. CST. You can do that with PIM. And I'm telling you, like, when do hackers operate? 2 a.m.? Why? Why would they do something like that, right? You got to think about why the attackers do things. Because they understand defense. Everyone's asleep. So if defense is not prepared for that, then they can easily get owned during the night, especially if they don't have a 24/7 operation. But an easy way to kind of defend against that, just broad strokes, set up time-based access. Now, all logins after business hours are not allowed. This is also good for user happiness, right? So it's kind of a twofold thing. Some people don't think of this as a cybersecurity operation, but I'm telling you, 100% is, without a doubt. And it's actually a really good methodology. It also allows for things like an approval process, like we talked about earlier, where certain people can say, yes, this is allowed. And there's also justification feedbacks from approval. So we can say, okay, these users are justified for these reasons. So if something happens, a incident response can go back and say, why did that user even have that access in the first place? Let's check the justification on the approvals to see why leadership gave them that access. That is something that a lot of organizations set up as policy, but they don't necessarily have as a solution. And this is just built into PIM in Entra ID. It's a part of Entra ID. It's a smaller part, but only allowed through E5 licensing. So it's just built in. Amazing. Seriously, next level stuff. It's basic, but it's awesome. MFA, again, if your organizations are not doing this already, they need to be. Again, known as conditional access now. Previous is known as legacy MFA. Legacy MFA is with all Microsoft licensing, but it looks like conditional access is only available with E3 and above. Extremely important. If you haven't started this already, you need to. Your organization needs to be on top of this. And honestly, even conditional access is being forced on users that have access to conditional access, if they have the licensing for it. Microsoft is forcing conditional access on users. So MFA will be a hard requirement in, I think, a month. I think in August 2024, that, or it might be January 2025. I'm not 100% on that, but it's coming up. It's coming up soon. And your organization, if they're not already doing it, needs to be. So yes, MFA can be time consuming and annoying, but it is one of the best methodologies to defend against people like me. If I'm trying to get access to your account and you have MFA configured for that account, I cannot access that account without social engineering that target. So I'm not just going to be able to steal your credentials. I have to steal your credentials and then gather the MFA code from you in some way, shape, or form through some social engineering attack. So that is way more complicated. You just made the attack process potentially like a 2 or 3 difficulty, all the way up to like a 7, 8, 9, or 10, depending on how well your users are trained. So what I recommend, if you haven't already configured MFA, is to configure and implement it now, and you can deal with the fallout later. You can investigate other solutions to spare users some of that annoyance later on, things like SSO, single sign-on, hardware tokens, passwordless access. All those fun things are cool, but you need to have MFA today. Really yesterday. If you don't have MFA yet, that needs to be one of your major focuses. From especially like a cybersecurity fundamental perspective, this is one of the things that you should really, really focus on. Something that a lot of people don't fully grasp either on the MFA side is they'll utilize something known as push notifications. And push notifications are by far the worst strategy for MFA possible. Because what happens is it leads to something known as MFA exhaustion. A real attacker will understand that users get annoyed, right? So if I just push MFA notifications to your phone over and over and over and over and over again, eventually a user, something like 50% of the time, will just say, fine, yes, because they won't understand it and they'll get annoyed. So that is what we call MFA exhaustion. And the user will just accept without really understanding what's going on, right? And that's a problem. So you should never use push notifications with MFA ever. It is the worst possible strategy for MFA rollout. Okay. So Microsoft Entra ID, very specifically, right? If you get attacked, if your organization gets attacked, this is where you would begin. Incident response begins here. This is the first place you look. And it's because it has all this low-level monitoring. It has like sign-in logs, audit logs, and things like that. And will allow incident response or administrators to check to see, what are users doing? Where are they coming from? Where did they log in? How did they log in? Did they use MFA? Did they fail a couple times before that? You know, how often were attempts happening between access attempts, right? All that information comes just by default in Entra ID. Now the problem is really retention. One of the major aspects to Entra ID and how effective it is retention. So if there is retention, let's say that with a low level license you might get a retention of 7 days. Okay, the standard um, length of time that an organization needs to respond to an incident is something like 2 weeks. And I would say real world something more like 2 to 4 weeks. And I've seen that happen legitimately to one of my clients. It was not a great time. They got hacked. One of their user accounts got hacked, and we were about a week late to even noticing because no changes had really been made. So we didn't notice anything happening. That's because we didn't have a whole lot of visibility into the environment. So whenever we actually got notified because a change had actually been pushed by the attacker, that's when retention really mattered. Because if we would only had 7 days of retention, we wouldn't have even seen it. Because our response was over a week late, right? And that's extremely common. So retention is very, very important. And that's why I recommend at least something like E5 licenses, because by default, E5 gives you a month of retention. And with other tools like Sentinel, you can actually make that retention unlimited. You could technically set up retention in a workspace via Sentinel for as long as you think is necessary. If you said 7 years, you could do that. It's possible with Sentinel. Not possible out the gate with Microsoft Entra, but if you wanted to do that, it would be possible with some other tools and other configurations. So yeah, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. By default, most will give you 30 days. But again, if you want to archive those logs to an Azure storage account, this is mostly done with Sentinel to get extended retention. Again, have a link on how to do that there. That is what I would recommend, especially if you're trying to do incident response. If you care about being able to determine what happened to your organization, and you know that attacks take a little while for you to respond to them, which is just the case. It's just reality. That is when the retention of those logs becomes paramount. Okay, so this is where we're actually going to get into some analysis, some sign-in logs and intra ID, and hopefully these will work. This is going to be live, so if anything fails, again, uh, just give me a second. So I was hoping to have that already populated there. Let's see if I can populate the 7-day retention here. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to refresh. And then we're going to populate the last 7 days. Okay, so that was good that we saw some information there. I just want to see a flood of data here, because really, especially if you do a month of data, it can take a little while. Um, remember that these are basically log files on the back end that this interface is giving you access to. So it's pulling data from a storage location, and it does that with a query, with a command. So this is all live. And again, some of this is going to be, is going to be real data. So just a heads up, this is like my account. This is my 365 access. Nothing really bad here. Maybe some location information, but that's standard. Whenever you log into your organization, you can see where your users are logged in from, and that is useful, right? We want that information. You can see also failures. Anyone who's trying to log into a specific account will get failures, right? If they don't understand the credentials. You can also see that it's coming from a different location that is not normal, right? That all of my users should be in one location, and this location is not that location. So this is a real attacker against my organization. And this happened at 9:30 yesterday. And someone tried to log in one time, right? They were just kind of testing the water. They were throwing out a login attempt against my organization. Again, this is a real attacker. This is not me. I did not do that. This is reality, right? Your organization is under attack right now. Every organization is, especially every organization on 365, because it's all in the cloud, right? And you can see Los Angeles, Washington District of Columbia, Russia, right? You can see how those are obviously not going to be my user accounts, but you can see that they're all failing, right? And it's because they don't even have the credentials, right? And even further, I require conditional access on all my logins. So MFA is a requirement. And of course, they're not going to bypass that easily, not easily at all. So sign-in logs are a great way for you to validate, who has logged in, what has happened. Did a user log in at this time and then try to do something else? There's another section of logs called audit logs that are basically changes to the organization. So did the user log in and then make that user account an admin? That is something that a combination of sign-in logs and audit logs could help you validate, right? And so again, very basic real-world assessment, but that is real. Okay. And this portal link, which is really cool, these are known as blades. You can see the Active Directory menu blade. These blades in Microsoft Azure are not specific to your organization. And what that means is that you can use this link and go to this portal location for all organizations. And based off the tokens, the login credentials that you provided, the cookies, you will just log into your organization's version. So again, kind of nice, Azure is really, they've thought ahead. So I can share this with someone else. They can put it directly into their browser and they will just show up at this location, but it will be theirs. It won't be mine. It'll be theirs. Super, super handy. Okay, so and this is a smaller conversation here, but Microsoft Azure Key Vault is another aspect of some of these more basic cybersecurity principles. Any organization that's trying to securely manage cryptographic security keys, think like SSH RSA keys, things like SSL TLS certifications, certificates, those are all going to be configured and maintained with the Azure Key Vault, distributed even. So this is known as a PKI solution, um, I forget what the P stands for. PKI is a key integrity solution, I believe. And PKI solutions are really just the storage and maintenance of all the keys. So if you have a lot of different endpoints and you're using key authentication, which is a good idea, I use it on all my Linux endpoints. But you have, let's say, hundreds of endpoints. You're not just going to remember all the keys, and you don't want to use one key for hundreds of endpoints. So you would use something like Microsoft Azure Key Vault to store those keys securely and to distribute them as necessary. So if you're worried about automated, certificate creation and distribution, this is how you would do that as an organization. And of course, that's just built into Azure. Okay, one of my favorites. This is essentially where everyone is going to live as a SOC analyst if you are using the Azure platform. This was previously known as Microsoft Defender for 365, and even before that was known as ATP, Advanced Threat Protection. And what's interesting is that um, all of the tools still have the ATP moniker. So if you are actually on the terminal or something like that, we'll see that here in a bit. ATP moniker will show up a lot, and it's because the tools were originally named that, and they can't just easily change the tools. So really, what ends up happening is, yes, there's additional capabilities for these tools, but generally they are just going to be the same thing, but marketing has kind of added their own, flavor to it. Maybe it's gotten a facelift in terms of the portal. It's gotten a little bit cleaner and things like that. But generally, it's still Microsoft EDR, right? If you want to think about what Microsoft Defender XDR is, it is their EDR platform. And even further, with all of the information coming from things like Outlook, which is the email platform on 365, things like Entra ID, right? All the logins and all the user account information, and again, and Defender, which is all the endpoint information. That is what they've started calling XDR, which is really extended defense and response. And that's what they mean by XDR. So they're calling this Microsoft Defender XDR, and what that means is not only does the Defender platform now support, the endpoint stuff, of course, but it also supports email, just right out the gate, and you don't even have to do anything to uh, to set up that capability. It just happens. So if an email account is being attacked, Defender is already defending against that. Pretty cool. And it also does things like Entra. So if user accounts look like they're getting brute forced, Defender will show you that information. So even further, it's not just the defense. It's not just the EDR implementation in Outlook on the endpoints and everything like that. It's also the portal, the SIEM platform that the SOC analyst will use to validate what's actually happening, right? If they want to manage that information, if they want to attack or they want to defend against those attackers, this is how they would do it, all right, is with the Defender platform. So Microsoft Defender XDR assists your security team to detect attacks, right? That is its purpose. Microsoft calls it get instant level visibility across cybersecurity attack chains with Microsoft Defender XDR. So that's their selling, right? That's their sales line. And I have some links here in terms of where the XDR platform lives, security.microsoft.com, as well as some more detailed documentation. It's very simple to roll this out, and I mean, I could do this in 10 minutes, maybe even less. It's literally a few buttons, and this even means not just rolling it out, but securing it, hardening it is literally one button. You can do additional stuff, but there are profiles that you can use. Like one is just like for reporting, and one is really designed for blocking. It makes things more complicated. It adds defense in depth strategy just into the 365 platform, and you can click one button. It's pretty amazing. In terms of ease of use, Defender XDR is, by and large, honestly, without a doubt in my mind, the easiest platform to configure from a SIEM perspective and EDR perspective that I have ever seen. If anyone's ever seen like how EDR gets rolled out, implementation for EDR is the difficult part of this strategy, right? Of using these tools, implementation is the difficulty. But that is the thing that Microsoft makes super, super simple, right? We're talking about a couple clicks. We're talking about having a website, learn.microsoft.com, that breaks it down line by line. And there's a lot of information there. Okay. This is why we still need SMEs. We still need subject matter experts. But once they put in a little bit of time to understand the platform and how the learning platform works, it is next level simple. Simplicity is the name of the game with this platform. All right. So Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is the more specific utility that gets rolled out specifically to the endpoints. Um, The agent itself is actually called the AMA agent. I think I did not include with this slide. But there used to be an old agent that's been deprecated. The AMA agent is the new agent. I don't remember what the acronym stands for. It doesn't matter. The Microsoft Defender for Endpoint gets installed with this agent, and you can do that with a script. You can do that automatically with things like SCCM, Intune if you're managing a whole lot of endpoints already. And that is how I would kind of recommend you do it if you have like hundreds of endpoints. But if you just have a few, like call it 10, 15, 20, you could just run a simple script on each of your endpoints, and it will install Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, the AMA agent. And basically, what that AMA agent does, what it allows you to do, is to defend against real-world threats live, in the moment, actively, but passively without intervention of users, right? You don't need a SOC analyst to actually do anything. The AMA agent, the Defender for Endpoint agent, because those are kind of the same thing. You install the AMA agent, you get Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Um, then you basically have the capability to respond and monitor, and understand alerts on those endpoints. So indicators of compromise, right? The Defender platform sees, hey, there's an attack coming from this IP address. That IP address is known to be bad. We're going to flag that. It may be a low alert, but it's still going to be an alert. So the SOC analyst can do something about it. The Defender endpoint may not block anything yet, but now it's actively watching it, right? So you onboard the endpoints, which is there's a process for Windows, Linux, Mac. By the way, it supports almost every single operating system that you could think of, including things like Android, which is pretty wild. Um, and um, and this Defender platform allows your SOC analyst to respond quickly to these threats. There is a little bit of a delay, just because again, I'm gonna be very straight. I'm not again, I don't work for Microsoft or anything like this, but this is something that I don't hear a lot from Microsoft training. But there is a delay from the attack to the alert in the platform, and I have to imagine it's because it's in the cloud. But that delay is something like 5 minutes, which is not an insignificant amount of time. If you had an on-prem SIEM, you could 100% say, I want my response time of threats to be sub 1 minute. And you could do that. You could probably do sub 30 seconds. You can, as far as I understand, you cannot change that with the Microsoft platform. That is something that's kind of just inherently built in because it's the cloud, because it's a public cloud solution, because lots of people are using that service. There is a delay because there is a queue, right? Public services rely on queues, which means first come, first serve. So it's handling thousands of requests every second, maybe even more than that. And once it gets to you, then that information will show up in your cloud platform. So just be aware of that. If you're looking for a super fast platform, like something that is live, this is not that. It is about a 5 minute response time. You could call it anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, but that's kind of roughly my determination of it after using the platform for a few years at this point, and after trying to make alerts pop and having to wait for them to pop. It feels about 5 minutes. Right? We're going to touch on a couple other things that I think are very important to understand. These just come with the territory. But safe links and safe attachments are something that you can enable on the Azure Cloud Platform. It does require E5 for this. But what's awesome, this used to be called, again, Advanced Threat Protection. But what it does is it prevents a lot of phishing vectors. So What it does is it provides URL scanning. It scans all of your URLs that come in. You could even have different methodologies for it to scan. So like you could have it drop an email into a mailbox and then scan it post. Like once it's in the mailbox, then it will scan every email one by one as it can. And then if it sees something, how do you say, if it sees something malicious after the fact, you can have it pull the email from the inbox. That's a less secure methodology, but it's more practical because the emails drop in your mailbox much quicker. If you have it done the other way, where it has to scan the URLs and the email first, there it will add a delay to your emails landing in inboxes. Now, is that big of a problem? In my opinion, no, because that delay is roughly 3 to 5 minutes, again, give or take. And I think that is an amazing idea, right? That you can have both. You can configure your own, scenario, which I think is amazing. Yes, it's secure, but it also allows a little bit of configuration. If you, for some reason, you have a real world scenario where those emails need to land in that inbox instantaneously or as close to instantaneous as possible, then you can manipulate that configuration. Pretty nice. There's also security templates that you can just click buttons on, profiles that are very simple to roll out. And not only do safe links and safe attachments work on Outlook, but it also works on things like Teams and even Office applications. Whenever I go to my email and I grab a link, it will literally be a safe link. It won't be a regular link. It will be a safe link that sends that data to Microsoft to validate that I'm not going to a malicious website before it actually sends me there, and that will work in any browser. I can even send that link to someone else and it will do it for them. So it's a very interesting capability that is just built in to the platform. This is not something that is easily factored in other solutions. It takes a lot more configuration and detail, nuance when you build this out on other vendors. Defender for Cloud is kind of like Defender for Endpoint, but it specifically covers cloud applications. It's similar to a WAF, a web application firewall, but it's not exactly the same, but it's complementary to those tools. If you've ever seen a WAF, it's really designed to block web application attacks from attackers, things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, things like that. But this is a little bit different. It's more about the tools, the usage of the tools and applications in the Azure platform. There are a lot of things that can be downloaded by users, and Defender for Cloud Apps basically allows you to manage and monitor those applications' usage and what they do. And this helps mitigate things like shadow IT because it allows you to do things like cloud discovery. So we can say, okay, what is everyone doing on the Azure platform? That is Defender for Cloud Apps. That is what it does. It's not about the endpoints. It's not about Outlook or anything like that. It's about access to those cloud apps. It allows you to control access to those apps. It allows you to sanction apps, whitelist or blacklist, depending on how you want to do that, allow or deny. And you can also set up what's known as a Cloud Access Security Broker, CASB. And those are basically say, okay, I want everyone to authenticate through this one thing, and then you can go access all of our stuff. That is done through a Defender for Cloud Apps. It is next level. A little bit less obvious in terms of its capabilities, but large organizations, especially organizations that have really jumped in the cloud, need to be looking at this as a solution. Okay, so let's do the fun stuff. You guys ready? We are going to do a live exercise on a real world target to show, first of all, what that looks like real world and what it looks like from a defense perspective as well. Okay, so let me pull this up real quick, and I'm going to make this one day. We're still going to have one alert that will show up. This one showed up earlier on accident, so that was my bad. But we will have we'll have another alert pop up, and then we may even check the incidents here. All right. So first things first, we have to configure the endpoint, right? So we have to go and onboard the asset. So I have a couple assets already onboarded. Here is going to be the one that's already in Azure. You can see that it is a a Linux server that's in the cloud in Azure, and you can see just some of the stuff that it provides here is just it's almost an overwhelming amount of information. But I'm telling you, as a SOC analyst, if you're trying to understand what was attacked and what that thing is, this is everything that you could possibly need in terms of incident and alerts based, specifically to that target, a timeline of events, security recommendations for that target, inventories for that target, discover vulnerabilities, missing security updates, security policy, more advanced features, and then even in a map, which I think is a literal graphical display. Yeah, attack like this is the type of stuff, and it doesn't show because normally it shows like from endpoint to endpoint to endpoint, and this is only a single endpoint that's being targeted here. But if you were talking about a larger attack, this is the type of stuff that a SOC analyst would need. Incident response is going to love an organization that uses this type of strategy to defend their cyber assets. So again, this is just one of those things where um, I think it's a very good idea to understand kind of how this works. And again, that's why we're going through it. So you would onboard the target. You would make sure that it shows up in your devices, in your device inventory. Um, and the onboarding actually happens through settings and then endpoints. And then there's an onboarding right here. It's kind of buried, of course. Thanks again, Microsoft. And this is how you can download a deployment script. You can use group policy if you're using Active Directory. This is basically SCCM to a degree. This is Microsoft Intune, and this is VDI, right? So for non-persistent devices even. So if you build out machines, just for short-term access, you could still defend those devices. Genius. Again, I've never even heard someone talk about that type of capability. So um, that's how you get the device onboarded. All right. So then you would have to kind of go and validate. Um, yeah, so we have a couple more that are showing up here. So what we're going, oh, that was the 1 week. Let's go back to the 1 day. Okay. So we're going to try to see when this alert happens in real time. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to pull up the two devices. So this device is my attacker box, red for evil, right? This is the attacker box known as a jump box, and this is my defensive. This is the one that's being attacked. So tech support is the blue team side, the one that's being targeted, and my user account. It's what's my name online. You can look me up, find me on a lot of blog posts and GitHubs and things like that. Um, is my handle. So this is the attacker, this is defender, right? So basically what we're going to do is we are going to pretend like we are an insider threat, and we are going to run an attack on this victim and make it come back to our jump box, right? So what we're about to do is definitely malicious because it's not normal, okay? So let's go through that. The one that I need here is going to be reverse shell generator. Again, if you don't know what a reverse shell generator is, that is okay. Don't worry about it. Just know that this is malicious. This is not something that is supposed to be happening in any way, shape, or form on a target, especially on a target that is in your organization. Okay, we're going to set that up. We're going to go to try to capture this. And real quick, I just want to show the configuration of the platform. And again, you can see the tool name for the EDR is actually MD, Microsoft Defender, ATP, Advanced Threat Protection. So it's still got that old school name. If you call out MD ATP Health, it will show you all the things that matter here, right? And so some of the things that matter, let's pipe this to less so we can read everything. Some of the things that matter here are going to be that it's fully updated. You can see the last time that the tool was it was updated in the app version that was on. You can also see two specific lines that are very, very important. So we need to have two things enabled, basically. We need to have behavioral monitoring enabled. This is one of the critical aspects of EDR that basically blocks real world attacks. Okay. And then the other one is real-time protection enabled equals true. So those two things specifically are the two things that need to be enabled for this to be working as expected. Okay, so the EDR is not really set up to be in block mode unless those two things are enabled. And that does not happen by default. The reason being is that EDR solution providers understand that these things can flag on a lot of stuff. They can block a lot of stuff that is not malicious. So you really got to run this in a report only mode before you enable block mode. Okay. So we have an open port. We already have all the, and this is going over the internet. This is live. If you don't believe me, that's fine. Trust me, I had to configure it before we got this going. This is going over the internet. I have port forwarding configured on the attacker side to receive this connection, and we are going to go gadget on this attack in 3, 2, 1. And if you didn't notice, what happened, right? Where'd it go? No next window. Interesting. So it killed that window that I tried to use to send back to myself, right? You would expect to see a catch over here on this side if you actually, if the attack worked. But EDR stepped in, it caught that attack, and it said, "Hey, there's a problem." Okay, so I'm going to close that port so nobody connects inbound. I'm also going to make some changes on the other side. Because again, this is all on the internet, so these are real world attackers. So I want to try to prevent that as much as possible. I don't want other people attacking my environment, only me. Okay, and we'll give it a second to see how long it takes for this alert to pop up in the Defender portal. And again, remember what I said, roughly 5 minutes, and honestly, it's probably a little bit less than that, maybe 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, give or take. But it's just not going to be instantaneous. Another part about this platform, as far as I understand, is that it does not happen instantly in terms of this portal. It will not update the page unless you actually refresh it. And that is uncommon. Other portals have this capability, which I think is genius, that basically updates every so often. It just automatically says refresh, refresh, refresh. Because if you didn't, then what could happen, right? Your blue teamers could be doing other things, and then they come back and they say refresh, and then the attack has been happening for the last 30 minutes, and now you're just now responding to it. So I do recommend to have some strategy here to look into making sure that this page updates. We're actually going to see this live here in a moment again, and it should give me an alert. I think it'll be a low severity alert, but it should show me something. Let's see here. All right. Let's see. Come on. Yeah. So again, this is one of those things where, you expect it to happen instantaneously, and this is what I mean, right? It's not instantaneous. The attack already happened, and thankfully it got blocked. But if this is a real world attack, there's a little bit of a delay. So just a heads up. This is probably what I would say is one of the issues with the platform that I'm not super happy about. But again, it comes with the territory of using a cloud service. There are pros to that level of capability, and there are cons. Okay, everything has a pro and everything has a con. I'm going to refresh. Okay, and then I'm going to have it go to only 1 day. Still not showing up. So this one, I did this one earlier, okay, on accident, kind of, but now I'm glad that I did, because this is the exact same attack path, similar at least, and it is real world. It happened this morning. You can see, not that long ago, same day, and this allows us to see something even if the platform doesn't do it for us. I do think that it's still just that we're just waiting for it to catch up, though. So we'll go through this, and if I notice that the alert pops up, we'll go to the new one. But this is the old one. This is my fallback here. All right, always be prepared. This is live This is a live environment, so just a heads up. That's why everything is not always perfect. But this is where Defender kind of jumps in and says, okay, I noticed that it ran this command, right? And you can see the actual command line attack that happened. You can see the Python 3 import, socket connect to this location, and then pty spawn bin bash. And this is basically what's known as a reverse shell. Reverse shells are malicious, right? That's really all you need to know, but they're backward connections that an attacker would use. So by understanding that this is malicious. The EDR understands this is malicious. When it happens locally on the endpoint, you can block it without a user actually having to do anything. And this is why EDR not only needs to be pushed out, but it needs to be in block mode. Yes, it is a good idea to have it set up in a report only mode for a little while. There's a little bit of time that an organization needs to kind of, it's growing pains, right? Where the EDR is going to be blocking things that it probably shouldn't. But a lot of that should be mitigated through the report only phase. After maybe a quarter, after maybe 3 months or so, the organization should move to a full block capability. Okay. And my endpoint, my XDR is configured for block mode, and that is how it was able to terminate that attack. Now it says low. It says low alert risk because it was blocked, right? And so again, you can kind of do a deep dive on how it was blocked. You could even do things like understand the MITRE attack techniques for this specific attack, right? Which is amazing. This is such a simple way for your SOC analyst to not only understand the attack, but to learn about real-world attacks against your environment. And so you can take this to MITRE and say, okay, well, how do you block against this style of attack? MITRE attack will tell you. And so you can not only, from a defensive perspective, this tool is brilliant, right? It allows you to do all of that just at a glance. Fantastic, right? You can see what exactly got blocked. You can see the process ID. You can see when it happened. It even gives a little basic description of the alert. You can see the incident. If there is an incident that this alert is tied to, it'll tell you that, which basically is an incident is just a bunch of alerts all tied together for one individual incident. And then as a blue teamer, you can even comment and say, hey, not a big deal. I already checked, I looked into this, or hey, this is a problem. You could manage the alert, right? And this is kind of like a ticketing system. You can classify the alert, right? Was it a true positive? Was it a false positive? Okay, this is what SOC analysts do, right? So this is all just built into the platform. You can assign this to users, right? And you can set the progress. So it's super easy to basically have like not only a SIEM, but a practical built-in ticketing system that revolves around the cybersecurity team that is all built into the portal. It's pretty amazing. There are negatives, and we've already seen one where I assumed that the thing would just show up and it just hasn't yet. But all the positives of this are honestly just too good. They really are just absolutely too good. So let's see it in a timeline, right? Just to kind of get a little bit more detail on this attack, right? So look how much information it shows, right? Not only does it show the MITRE attack techniques, but it shows the user account. It shows things like all the entities that are being used. Here you can see that Python was targeted, right? The Python scripts are being used. You can even see that something on Ruby was being utilized. I think that was the EDR though. You can basically, what's awesome about the timeline is it doesn't just show the attack. You can also see all the attacks over the course of a long period of time. See, this is back to February 2024. And you can change that timeline too if you want more information. But it shows you everything around those attacks, not just the attacks themselves, but everything that led up to the attack. In terms of incident response, I don't know how you do better than this. Legitimately. You can search in this. You can filter all this information. Right? And of course, where is this all this information coming from? It's coming from a storage account. It's coming from an Azure storage account that is designed specifically for Defender. Defender kind of has its own backend storage account, and you can implement with that backend information directly, right? Directly. The way that we do this in the Defender platform is underneath the hunting portion here on the left. there's something known as advanced hunting. There's no basic hunting, I guess. But once you go into advanced hunting, what it does is it allows you to search for things. And let's see if we can pull off a real world search here. I just want my basic one. Do I have one? This one. This is all KQL. That one's git clone curl IP. This one's the villain shell. I want to see if I can, again, this is live, so bear with me here. See if I have one of my queries that I've created. Shared queries, suggested. Okay, cool. So there's some suggested one. So again, this is all just built into the platform. You can perform threat hunting on the Defender platform straight out the gate. And I just think that that is just so amazing in terms of the capabilities here. So let's see if I can change this to, I'm going to make this, let's look at my attack technique again. So if I understand attacks, I'm going to say pty spawn bin bash, copy. So if I can make this paste, there we go. Okay, so I think we can run that query. Let's see if that works here. Results found in the time frame pty.spawn. Try that guy. There we go. See, again, it's live, so you gotta bear with me, all right? So what this allows you to do is to use KQL. KQL, Custom Query Language, is the language that allows you to pull data from the backend storage accounts directly. And you can use, it's basically like SQL, kind of, but it's a flat language, which means it's more basic. You can see basically essentially what I do here is I pull from a specific location, device process events, which you can see down here. Device process events right there is underneath the devices table, or the devices yeah, the devices table, and then you call from the device process events column, and then you can say, okay, where process command line column contains pty.spawn, I want to see every instance of that. And you can see all the scenarios that have happened. It looks like all of those were today. So essentially, this is threat hunting. I'm looking for something in the environment that may or may not have even been picked up by Defender. Just because it's in Defender doesn't, or just because you find it in the threat hunting platform, advanced hunting, does not mean that Defender is going to see it. This is more of like an automated approach, whereas this is a more manual approach, where I can actually, force, and you can see my query history, which is super cool, where I can actually force it to do things very specifically, right? So I think that this is a really awesome technique, and to show it off and to go into this much detail is pretty uncommon. But this was able, for as a defender, I was able to use the platform to see a real world attack, and I was able to provide that capability of block mode on an endpoint. And I'm telling you that this is not that hard. If I could do it, you can do it. Okay. There's also some more detailed custom detection rules for things that can run on a frequent basis. You can see I have some running basically every 24 hours. Probably need to reduce those. But basically what it does is it searches for those in the environment. And if it finds one of those, it's basically like a KQL query like we were just looking at on advanced hunting. If it finds one of those, it creates an alert. So you could automate the creation of alerts on things that the Defender platform isn't even going to see on its own. So maybe you want to see everything that is PowerShell related. You can do that, right? And that allows you as a Defender to have a lot more capability on your platform. Very much critical when it comes to trying to understand your environment, understand what people are doing in your environment at a glance with very little effort. You have to learn a little bit of KQL to kind of do this stuff, but again, this isn't even required. Most of your SOC analysts will be living here in your alerts and your incident pane, right? Which again, incidents are just multiple alerts kind of combined. But not only the incidents, you can see it takes a little bit longer because there's more information to load, but also on the home page. I think this one reloads itself if I'm not mistaken. I forget, but you can see a whole lot more information about what's going on. And one of these here, I think the threat analytics, as well as devices at risk, and then the active incidents. They call these cards. These all show kind of your current environment, and you can manipulate this. You can move these around. You can put this on a huge screen, like a 4K monitor, if you wanted, and move the tabs around any way that you wanted. This is fully customizable. So again, and all that is just built in. You don't even have to do anything. It's just how it works. So it's very, very much a very strategic platform. Um, in terms of what it's capable of. So I hope that that live attack kind of walkthrough showed a lot of the capabilities of the platform. Again, you can also see it supports a dark mode for those of us who are in IT already. You guys know how important that is for our eyes after long periods of strain. But that is the capabilities of the platform. And again, I would not be pushing this if I didn't think that it was capable. I know that we ran into that one problem, and you can see real world runs into problems, happens all the time. But the reality is that it is capable. It's very capable. Okay, so the rest of these tools are quite a bit more advanced, and so we're not going to have a live training session on Microsoft Sentinel. We are just going to cover what it's capable of, and the real reality is because we'd have to talk about Python, logic apps, workbooks. There's a lot of stuff going on there that would take a whole lot of time that we just don't have time for in this training seminar. Okay, that would honestly I'd need like 3 hours just to get started on Sentinel. But we're gonna talk about it. All right. So Microsoft Sentinel is the cloud native solution. It's also scalable for basically any amount of endpoints or data sets that you need. And it's also a threat hunting platform. It's very similar to the advanced threat hunting platform that we saw with the Defender portal. But it also does more than that, much more. In the major scenario that it's capable of is the security orchestration, automation, and response, or whenever I see AR, I think automated remediation, which is basically the same thing as automation and response, because what it's capable of is seeing something and then responding to it, similar to how the EDR works. But Sentinel allows you to build those tools or those rule sets on your own. So if you want something to happen in a very specific way, you can do that with Sentinel. Okay, so alert pops up, and even that could even be an alert that you created through the Defender platform with your custom detection rules. If that alert pops up, we want to do X, and we can configure X to be anything because of the potential of Python Jupyter notebooks is how Sentinel does that, as well as things like workbooks for visuals and logic apps, which are no code solutions. So you don't even need to know Python to get this up and running. So it collects data at a cloud scale. It supports almost every vendor. There's like over 300 vendors it supports. So let's say you have like, I don't know, a FortiGate firewall at your perimeter, and you want to import all those logs into your Sentinel platform. It can do that easily. All right, easily. It's actually got some. We'll talk about data connectors specifically for that. Um, it helps you reduce false positives because it also utilizes artificial intelligence as well as some Microsoft Analytics and stuff. Again, that big data that I was talking about, um, and that artificial intelligence. I have the name on another slide, but that really comes into it's very key, and you get access to it as a trial at first when you set up your Sentinel workspace, and it makes a difference. It's pretty good. And then it helps you again respond to incidents rapidly through orchestration and automation. So Sentinel is kind of like your bird's eye view. It's like Defender, but it's more of a big picture. It's the advanced blue team where your normal SOC analyst, your 60 to 80,000 a year SOC analyst, your tier one, level one SOC analyst, they would be watching Defender. You would have your 100 to 150K, advanced, threat hunters or automated remediation experts. They would all be living in Microsoft Sentinel. And they wouldn't necessarily be dealing with the day to day where alerts pop up and they're responding to them. They're more thinking about, okay, well, how can we use this okay, we have a lot of alerts and they all look like this. Okay, how can I just resolve all those alerts without any human intervention? That's what Microsoft Sentinel is capable of. And in terms of time, the overhead time that your SOC analysts actually use, right? That time that they're actually utilizing during the engagement, while they're working, all of that can be covered off and actually eliminated through automation and orchestration. So that's kind of, again, that's what Microsoft Sentinel provides. Yes, it is costly, but it can actually reduce costs in terms of overhead for your SOC analysts because they don't have to do anything, right? If we have a bunch of alerts and they all look the same, we can just eliminate that problem and just remediate them automatically. So the way that it kind of works, again, just very basic overview of Azure Sentinel, is you collect data with data connectors, and these are built out for lots of different vendors, hundreds of vendors at this point that Microsoft has set up, and a lot of it, especially in Azure, is like click, click, we're done. Other vendors, you may have to import stuff to the tool. You may have to run an agent on a device. It kind of depends on the solution, but Microsoft is really good at trying to allow you to import data from basically any location. AWS, other endpoint detection software, firewalls, almost anything that you can think of is supported with a data connector these days. If you want visual reporting of data in Sentinel, that is what workbooks are called. All right. And a lot of these are known as books. So there's 3 different types of books. The first one that we're going to talk about is workbooks, and it's just more of just a visual representation of data. Very good for showing leadership, right? Remember, we need leadership to be on our side, so we need to be providing reports to leadership for them to understand what we're blocking, what we're doing, and why this cost is actually useful for the organization. And Sentinel provides that capability, right? Microsoft was thinking ahead. So they also utilize machine learning to correlate alerts into incidents and to kind of understand stuff without humans really having to do any work, which is nice. We also have playbooks, right? And playbooks are essentially um, logic apps, right? They are essentially no-code solutions where you can have some users that are more advanced writing Python scripts, or not even Python, some more basic users who are capable of configuring um, these logic app no code solutions to say, okay, if this, then this, right? Logic apps, right? So if something happens, then we want to do this. And logic apps are very powerful, though they are no code solutions. So it's not, you can't do anything. You can do a lot of things with no code solutions. Again, you don't even need to know how to use Python or Bash or anything like that to get started with playbooks. Super cool. Now, the more advanced stuff is going to be Jupyter notebooks, which are again in Python. But the nice part about Jupyter notebooks is since it's in Python, you can essentially do anything that you can think of. If you can think it, you can probably do it with Jupyter notebooks. Pretty next level. More advanced blue team aspects there. So again, this is kind of how the tool works with correlating incidents. The machine learning function is called Fusion in Sentinel, and it is again pretty good. You can create those custom rules and have it flag, and then have it respond, or just create incidents for you. Those incidents will show up in Defender. You can even import data directly from Defender into Sentinel. Um, it just depends on what you want to do. The more data you import into Sentinel, the more money it's going to cost you from a storage perspective. Remember, it's going to be compute. Mostly, it's going to be compute, storage, and networking for Sentinel. That's where a lot of the cost comes from, as well as machine learning, I guess. And so if you want to reduce that cost, you would just import less logs. The more logs you import, the more it's going to cost you. Okay, so threat hunting, right? Microsoft Sentinel threat hunting platform allows you to proactively search for potential incidents and IOCs based off the latest cybersecurity news. And again, what's awesome about that is that all that happens, just on its own. Sentinel will just include stuff from other organizations. Defender also does this too, where it says, hey, this is a problem. Other people are running into this problem, so it will search your environment for that attack type, which, I mean, who does that, right? Really, Microsoft is the only environment that's really capable of that. Um, Especially at large, writ large for the entire world. That is what Sentinel really provides. You can run KQL queries to understand different parts of the attack chain. You can utilize MITRE. You can bookmark attack vectors. And then, of course, the Jupyter notebooks are just, when you talk about Python, you're really talking about almost anything. If you can think it and you have someone that can write in Python, they can probably do it. And from a threat hunting perspective, it's similar to Defender, but it's just more capable when you start talking about the automation orchestration aspect of it. KQL is going to be that language that you use to actually, source all the data. Remember that all the data is just being stored in basically a data set, right? It's like a storage account, and that storage account is kind of similar to a SQL Server table, but it just uses a different methodology to store that data. It's a flat database rather than a relational database like SQL is. And KQL is a flat database language that allows you to pull data from those tables so that you can search for things, just like we did with the advanced attack or advanced threat hunting. We were able to find attacks live with a KQL query. Even if Defender doesn't see it, the KQL query will if you know what you're looking for. And that is threat hunting in a nutshell. Again, proactive cybersecurity methodology, whereas a SIEM is a reactive, right? You monitor, you wait. You wait for something to happen, you try to respond to it. That's reactive. Threat hunting, on the other hand, by utilizing KQL in Defender and Sentinel, is a more reactive or a proactive approach because you're searching for something that might be there, but you're not 100% sure. You don't even know if there is an attacker in your environment, but you are assuming that there is. If you are not assuming that there is an attacker in your environment right now, you are not playing the game properly, right? And all you got to do is reference any other sport. If anyone's ever played a sport, right, American football, soccer, whatever it is, you know, all of those sports, one of the first things they teach you is you cannot react to things. You have to be proactively responding to incidents that haven't happened yet. If you are reacting to something, your chances of beating someone else, to the play are, 30, 40, 50% roughly, kind of depending on how good the opponent is. But if you are proactively responding to a play, your chances of success increase drastically. Okay. And it's because you are looking for something that nobody else even knows is there, right? You are moving before anyone else has moved, right? And so if you're not doing it like that, again, this is where defense in depth, especially, but really where zero trust really comes into play. Someone who is doing this, an organization that is putting time and effort into threat hunting and Sentinel and all these tools and everything, utilizing KQL to search for attackers that may not even be there. Those are companies that understand cybersecurity fundamentally. They understand why cybersecurity is important, and they understand why they need to put time and effort and money, again, definitely money, into this problem, right? Because if you don't, you are not playing the same game that the red teamers are. You're not playing the same game that the attackers are playing. And if you're not playing their game, you're not even showing up. Okay. Remember that workbooks are more of a visualization component to Sentinel. They allow you to kind of see things, right? Analytics efficiency. There's a lot of things. AWS user activities. So if you had AWS logs being imported, you could just do click, 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 and then it just creates a visual report for you. Super awesome. Great for leadership. All right. And again, this is just kind of a little bit more detail on the automation and remediation side of Sentinel in terms of what it's capable of. SOC technicians, right? It can free up their work efforts because now they don't have to do anything for a variety of incidents because you're just automating all of that stuff away. They don't have to respond because it's already been resolved, right? You can orchestrate tasks. There are lots of different vendors. Actually, I need to update that. It's now over 300 vendors. And of course, the playbooks with either Azure Logic Apps, which are no-code solutions, or uh, your playbooks, your Jupyter notebooks with Python are really, really capable. Again, this is more advanced blue team opportunity. This is really the height of cybersecurity. Like you need to be organizations that are doing this care. Not everyone is going to be doing this, and not everyone's going to be doing this tomorrow. But again, this is where you should try to think about going to. And these solutions allow you to get there quickly. And of course, just a couple other things I want to touch on before we call it here and get into some Q&A. Watch lists, which I think are just a really awesome component. It allows you to quickly investigate and track specific pieces of data or endpoints that can basically prevent or reduce alerts. It's really about reducing alert fatigue at the end of the day. It enriches event data because now those watch lists include, let's say, like everything at HQ. I'm more worried about things at HQ than I am at my other corporate offices. That's a watch list, and now everything that's in that watch list is now a one step higher on the criticality of that alert. That's what it's about, right? And you can actually filter alerts and things like that with watch lists. It's a really interesting take on um, basically management of alerts and incidents. And this is something that I haven't really heard a lot of other vendors make a big deal out of, but Microsoft is a fundamental component of their solution. Now, again, Purview, this is a very short conversation here, but Purview is the compliance portal like we talked about. It allows you to protect data with sensitivity labels, which allows you to essentially protect data even offline. Even if the data is stolen and then taken offline, like a Word document, and they try to open it, if they don't have the right credentials, they cannot open it. It's like it's encrypted, which is really awesome. This is something that I've never heard anyone else. I mean, I know there are other organizations that do this, but offline and across every portal, all across 365, in Outlook, in Teams, you can utilize Purview to prevent access to data and to track access of data across all locations. And again, that's why Purview is so awesome and so expensive. Okay. But for your auditors, your compliance officers, this is going to be where they live. Not necessarily your blue teamers, but it's so tangentially related and such a new product that I have to bring it up here because you might be able to use Microsoft Purview to actually convince leadership to purchase all the other tools. Okay, so this is going to be the download, the ebook that you receive with this masterclass. And again, essentially what we're talking about here is how the Microsoft security solutions can help you be more efficient, right? To train your users to be more productive than other staff, right? We've categorically, if you follow all these things that these vendors have created for us, they will just make your teams more productive, right? 20% more productive just across the board. And again, when you're talking about money and ROI, this is what we mean, right? It's about training, which improves timeliness, insight. It's about the career benefits of the users. The platform itself allows them to have a better relationship with the training material and will normally result in higher pay for the end users. But the organization can kind of flip that and say, well, it actually takes less effort for us to get people trained on the platform. So you can bring in juniors, right, at like, 50, 60K a year, train them up on the platform. They will be more productive faster, which will save you money, right, at all ports and points, not even just the cost of the users, but the cost of the training and the time it takes to get them trained, to get them to a point where they will actually be effective. So these tools are very capable. And even further, because it's Microsoft, they have certifications and training methodologies and modules that you can just say, hey, we want all of our SOC analysts to get training, every month. Just we'll pay for it. Go get a new certification, get better trained. Use learn.microsoft.com. Understand the tools, and all of it is just readily available. So if you guys are looking to utilize these platforms from an efficiency perspective, you know, let the data tell you why that's important, right? Why this is actually going to be useful for you and your team and your organization. Okay. So be sure that you are growing your business. I myself have I think it's just an associate with the SC200, but man, these certifications are no joke. You do have to understand those certifications. You have to understand the platforms very, very well. But again, this is where you can say, look, here's a pathway. Microsoft has already created this for you. All you got to do is follow the guide. Right. Some key highlights from the training. There's interactive discussions and like things you can click on during the training, like basically real world modules that you can do, which is super cool. There's a lot of case studies as well that you can do kind of a deep dive on something that's happened real world that will make sense. And of course, all this is being created by SMEs at Microsoft that know what they're talking about. Okay. The teams at Microsoft who create all this training are honestly just as capable as their technical people because they have to be. If they don't know how to create the training modules, then you know they have to know how to use the products before they can create the training. So those training teams, they're very good. You can get access to virtual labs through the training modules. You can get recordings of instructor-led classes. Of course, if you sign up with Netcom, the Learner Portal comes with all of this. There are opportunities for free repeats. And then there's also experience with 24/7 priority support. And I've used a lot of this myself as not only an instructor, but as a student of Netcom. I really recommend utilizing Netcom's platform to, again, just increase the capabilities of you and your team. If you're just a technician, this is going to be good. If you're an organization and you want all of your team members to be utilizing this methodology, right? You can get your whole team on board with Netcom to get them prepared to use these tools. Yes, they are easy, but they still require training. SMEs are kind of a requirement when you build out these tools. You're building out a SOC, building out a SIEM. Have someone that knows what they're talking about, and you can get those people trained, right? Maybe you don't have anyone yet. That's what this is for, right? That's what this Netcom training can help you and your team achieve. Okay. So again, certification renewals, there are some benefits of keeping that certification renewed. Having to pay for the exam is great. That happens at the beginning, but you don't actually have to pay for it again. You just have to make sure that you are continuously learning. Some of this is similar to the way the CompTIA does it, where it's like a continuing education credit. But with Microsoft, it's a little bit simpler than that. So within a certain amount of time, you can renew your training, and I think it's basically a test depending on the certification. Some of them are simpler than others, but it's cool that Microsoft kind of allows you to do this because it just makes sure that you're staying on top of your training. So not only can you get your users trained, but you can keep them trained. And of course, Microsoft will alert you to this via email, and as a team lead, as a management of these of a team that's getting trained, you can easily track this as well. Okay. So again, if you are looking to get trained and certified with Microsoft, with Netcom platform, I highly recommend it. Netcom is a Microsoft Cloud training solutions partner, and again, people like myself, others who are well trained on the Microsoft platform from a variety of the solutions in Microsoft. We are here because not only are we wanting to get people trained, but this is our passion. If it's not obvious after this master class that this is my passion, I hope that came through in my delivery, because this is next level. If you're really looking to take your organization to the next level, sign up with us, and let's get it done, right? We'll get your people trained. We'll get them to a point where they fundamentally understand at least what to do. We'll give them a pathway at a bare minimum, and even potentially get them much, much further than that. All right, and I want to thank you for this masterclass. Really appreciate everyone watching this masterclass and joining Netcom for the Azure Security Masterclass. And I hope that your journey goes well on learning Microsoft Security Cloud Solutions.
Thank you, Logan. That was very informative. I know everyone is looking forward to the Q&A session, so go ahead and start putting your questions into the questions panel. And while you do that, I would like to give the presentation rights over to Sagnik, our vendor manager, to introduce you to our promotions and webinar-related courses.
So as you can see on my screen, this is the event handout that you all have received. Once again, we thank you all for taking out the time and joining our masterclass today. As part of this handout, you'd see the content section wherein the different sections within the document have been listed here, and everything is hyperlinked. So you can quickly use these links to jump to the specific section of the document. Before we proceed, it's worth mentioning that Netcom Learning, we are the proud winners of the Microsoft Partner of the Year award for 2 years in a row. So as we say, the legacy continues. In 2022, we were the Partner of the Year worldwide, and in 2023, we were the Partner of the Year for United States. And we are also a Microsoft Cloud Solutions partner. That means that we have capabilities across all the 6 solution areas recognized by Microsoft. A few more things about us. We are in the training industry for over 25 years now, having serviced over 80% of the Fortune 1000 companies, serviced 100 plus US military bases. Overall, we have trained 1 million plus professionals across 36,000 plus unique enterprises, and we enjoy a 96% recommendation rate from our customers. All our trainings on Microsoft are delivered by instructors that are certified and authorized by Microsoft, and our overall instructor pool stands at about 3,200 plus certified professionals. We are your one-stop solution for all your corporate upskilling needs with official training across every major technology and business solution provider. So as we can see over here, we are an authorized training partner for all the industry leaders across Microsoft, AWS, Cisco, CompTIA, PMI, EC Council, and others. Now, within this handout, you would also find this particular page wherein you can find the session recording. You can use the link to access the recording for today's session and revisit the concepts that were covered in today's masterclass. On this page, you'd find the link to access your complimentary courseware and the digital badges. The same landing page that we covered at the beginning of my presentation. You can find the direct access link here, and the link to which is also available on your chat on GoToWebinar. Also, all the participants will be given access to Netcom 365. It is our student portal that includes a lot of features and resources for you to take advantage of to supercharge your skilling journey. All you need to do if you're accessing it and activating it for the first time is set up your password and then you'd be good to go. We highly recommend everyone to explore our learning portal to take full advantage of all your skilling resources. Now let's quickly take a look at some of the latest offers on Microsoft trainings and certifications. First off, we have the Microsoft Quick Start program, which is applicable across the entire portfolio, encompassing Azure, Security, Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, and Power Platform. It is truly the best in class exclusive enterprise discount offering on your end-to-end Microsoft training across the official portfolio. The pricing model is quite simple and straightforward. If you have a team, if whether you are a large organization or a small organization, and you have a team to train across departments or within the same department, we have two options for you depending on your team size. If you are looking to train more than 15 learners, you would be getting a flat discounted pricing of $300 per day per learner. And of course, as the number of days for the particular training increases, the amount also increases, but you get significant savings on this. If you are having a smaller team that is 14 learners or less, then you still are entitled to a $400 discounted flat pricing per day per learner. This really accounts to huge savings when it comes to large scale training. So we highly recommend everyone to get in touch with us, explore the offering by clicking on the link provided in this handout. And all your trainings can also be customized based on the specific projects and workloads that you and your team, your organization is working on. And our industry specific subject matter expertise encompasses a wide range of verticals, as you can see over here, from banking and financial services, healthcare, federal and state and local government, to education, energy, manufacturing, retail, consumer goods, and more. Next up, we have the Microsoft value of certification. We highly recommend, along with Microsoft, that whenever you are investing in your skilling journey, be it in terms of your time and effort or your training funds, it's always recommended to secure your skills by getting the validation and approval from Microsoft. So what it does is certification from a decision maker perspective. You want to ensure that the ROI on the training is guaranteed. So this is like a quality control on the training investments that you make for your team. So once your team completes the skilling, they can take the associated certification exam to make sure that they are eligible and they qualify under the standards that have been set by Microsoft on the related technologies. And if you are a learner and a professional, it is a great career booster for you, right? The credential of being Microsoft certified is industry recognized, and these are industry aligned to specific job roles, and these demonstrate the real world skills required to solve real world business challenges. So these badges add a lot of value to the credibility of your profile. It enhances your job prospects and career growth. For a limited time, we have a 10% exclusive discount on all Microsoft certification exam vouchers going on right now. We highly recommend if you are considering taking training or getting certified, this is the right time for you to do so. The link has been provided on this particular page of your handout. We highly recommend you to avail the same. Also, you'd find that if you have a team, if you are a big organization or a small organization, having a team that you're looking to train, our 2-hour private group training demo is also a great option for you as the next step. It is free of cost, as we say, you can see over here, and it is customizable as per your needs. So rather than a public delivery, which was the format of today's session, you're going to get a private group training wherein our instructor is going to connect with you, understand your specific requirements, and our learning consultants are going to map out your specific needs and accordingly tailor the skilling plan that makes sense for you and your business. So these training demos are provide a great value because these are customizable. All the trainings are delivered by our top rated trainers, and you get a complimentary skilling plan consultation, allowing you to get clarity on which specific courses are needed to be taken by your team. And in case you are a large organization, you are a multi-shore firm with multiple divisions and your workforce spread across geographies, or you have multiple business units within the same organization, the skilling needs kind of get complicated in those scenarios, right? But how do you manage your training funds in that case? And that's why we have the Learning Passport, which provides a flexible team training package. Basically, you park all your training funds with us for 12 months. And within these 12 months, you get exceptional value on the funds that you invest, right? Up to 100% increase of your fund value is what you can experience with our Learning Passport. And these funds are flexible. That means you can use it to train irrespective of the individual that you want to opt in for. A simple distinction with the Netcom Plus is that it is mapped to the specific learner and it is only valid for that learner. But in Learning Passport, you get that additional flexibility that for one particular course, you can pick one particular learner, and for another, you can use your same training dollars for another course. This is basically giving you unlimited access to our entire authorized training portfolio of 4,000 plus official courses. So we highly recommend you to check this out if you have such skilling requirements, especially keeping in mind that the end of the year is coming and we are aware that organizations need to finalize their training budgets. If they don't use it, they kind of lose it. So this is an ideal solution for you guys to park your training funds and make sure you get the ultimate value all year round. Now we will take a look at the recommended courses that we have. Over here, you can see the courses that are related to today's topic have been mapped here, divided by fundamentals and role-based. So we highly recommend everyone to click on these links. All of these are hyperlinked. Pick the item that you want to explore and you'd be redirected to the official documentation that we have on these particular courses. Also, please note that all the courses that are delivered by Netcom Learning are delivered by subject matter experts. You get additional perks like 180 days access to virtual labs wherever applicable. Also, you get access to 90 days to the class recordings to revisit the concepts. You get full access to our Netcom 365 portal, as well as you can repeat the classes free of cost within a specified duration if you want to revisit or you couldn't attend the first time. We also have a couple of free resources mapped here, like our upcoming free event and a blog. We highly recommend you to explore those as well. With that, I'd like to thank everyone. Do follow us on our social handles, and we hope to see you soon once again on one of our events and classes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much for guiding us through that information, Sagnik. And now we're going to go ahead and jump right into our question and answer session. Our first question is, if my organization was already in AWS or still on-prem, could I use Microsoft to help secure our environment?
Right, that's a great question. So, if your organization is already using some other CSP, some other cloud service provider, it could be AWS, Google Cloud provider, even some other of the secondary or tertiary providers. Microsoft Azure Cloud Solutions are specifically designed to secure your environment regardless of where your assets are located. That could be on-prem, that could be in the cloud, that could be in AWS, GCP. They have what's known as data connectors, and there's another utility known as Azure Arc, which allows you to basically connect hybrid cloud environments. Again, Azure to AWS, Azure to GCP, all of the above. That allows you to track and defend those assets regardless of their actual location. So if you are already using AWS or GCP and you're like, man, I really wish I could use this, you can, right? It's already designed to be that way. That's why Microsoft designed it that way, so that users that are already, supplanted, they're already, they already have their feet entrenched in AWS. You don't have to leave AWS, right? There are reasons to actually be in a hybrid cloud environment. Microsoft supports that 100%.
Our second question is, how does SOC help my company defend against attackers?
So a lot of organizations, they have all the cybersecurity fundamentals down, but they may not be actually monitoring yet. This is more of the defense in depth strategy rather than just the cybersecurity fundamentals. Defense in depth tells us that monitoring has to be done if we want to actually secure our environment, if we want to defend and respond reactively to real world threats. The SOC provides that level of monitoring for your endpoints, for your data, for your assets, again, regardless of where they're at, in especially in Defender XDR, the Defender platform, by giving you that visibility. So without visibility, without the ability to see an attack, you cannot block them. So the SOC is basically it's built around the SIEM, and the SIEM solution in Azure is the Defender platform. So the Defender platform allows you to build a SOC anywhere in the world, virtually in the cloud, with users on any continent. And they all of their goal would be to monitor attacks against your organization so they can defend against them, so they can respond to them. So that's essentially what a SOC provides an organization.
Next question in the queue is, what are some costs that you could expect by running some of these Microsoft cybersecurity tools in Azure?
So there are quite a few costs related to the cybersecurity components of Azure. The Defender platform, from what I've seen, is not an exponential cost. I think the more endpoints that you would add, of course, your cost would go up. Um, if those endpoints get turned off, those costs would be reduced. If they run 24/7, of course, it's going to be more expensive. But when you start talking about Sentinel, I think is where a lot of the cost increase will come from, and it's because it has its own methodology. They're called workspaces to store the data sets, and the more data that you put into those workspaces, the more it's going to cost you. Again, the basic breakdown of cost is going to be storage, networking, and compute. So the more queries that you run, more cost. More data that you send up to the cloud, more cost. More data that you're actually storing in the cloud in that workspace, more cost. So if you're trying to reduce costs, that's where I would start. For my small POC, set up with users and everything, and with a couple devices that I just use for training purposes, it's like $20 a month. Um, but for a real organization utilizing Defender and Sentinel, it is possible that you can get to I don't want to go too overboard, but if you're at like, 50 to 100 endpoints, I could easily see that being $500 to $1,000 a month without too much trouble. You can reduce the amount of cost by reducing the incoming log file size. Um, there is a way that you can do that before it actually hits the cloud, but that is a more advanced FinOps or financial operations methodology, which becomes a bigger concern when you're actually doing cybersecurity in the cloud. So it is, of course, dependent on how many devices and what you're doing, how many tools you're really using, of course, but the cost can be a little bit higher than people expect. So hundreds of dollars is not unheard of. $1,000, $2,000 a month for large organizations, not unheard of at all. And Purview, again, can be like $36 an hour whenever it's spun up, depending on how much data it's trying to incorporate and understand. So hundreds of dollars just for a Purview instance to be running for a few days. Right, so there's a lot of costs associated with that, and it does again come down to exactly which tools you're using and how you're using them.
Our last question of the day is, are there any ZTA solutions that you would recommend?
Yeah, so zero trust architecture is more of a policy. It's more of a top-down organizational approach. There are solutions that they're like ZTA compliant, and not all ZTA solutions are actually ZTA compliant. So something to make sure that you validate. But ZTA solutions can be really beneficial for organizations trying to implement zero trust. I think ZTNA, zero trust network architecture, is some of the most important zero trust solutions to focus on. I won't call out any vendors because I'm not super biased in that regard, but I am biased in terms of ZTNA, zero trust network architecture. By forcing devices to know each other, by forcing every single request to be validated at the network level, this can provide a level of assurance for organizations that their environment is fairly secure. Insider threats can still bypass ZTNA, but ZTNA essentially blocks all forms of reconnaissance by attackers, which means that if I can't see the target, I cannot understand the target, I cannot attack the target. And that is what ZTNA specifically focuses on. So if I had to say, where do I start with zero trust? I would start with the ZTNA product specifically. Roll that out to all of your endpoints. Utilize MFA or conditional access policies in Azure to make sure that all users are validated, and then make sure that every single request at the network level is being secured, being validated with an identity, and that is a very very secure solution. This is like DoD level solutions, and that is again is ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Architecture.
Once again, I want to remind you that as you leave the session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to help us by taking a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience as we are constantly looking at how we can improve our future sessions. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. We want to thank all of you for joining us today, and if you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope that you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us soon. Feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Have a great day, everyone.